Asclep strode about and about, seemingly thoroughly owned, while his new emperor was warring with the Ainra. He had been forced to face many problems back on Gluxoria. Although he did not know it, Zarkhator's rise of power had almost brought a civil war to the Grox Empire. For the first time in many a millennium, the Grox, as many know, hate all other species. So obviously many Grox were unhappy that a total stranger rise in power too quickly, even though he did perfectly fit the title for their chosen one. Asclef himself did not approve of Zarkhator. He had been acting as his leader until Zarkhator stepped in, and had not gotten over it. And as an act of blind vengeance, he had decided to gain that power back. It was time to bring his most awesome soldier. Asclef looked up, and when his door slammed again, a tall-lived creature strode inside with powerful strides. She was obviously not Grox, but it looked like they had worked on her. She was very humanoid, but covered in red fur, right to her head with dark red stripes, with the more of a cat-like head. She had a big round crimson eyes, and it looked as if she had survived an accident of some sort, with machinery covering her right eye and the arm from the elbow to the fingertips. The female's right hand looked as if it had been replaced by a metal claw. With her turning and scanning the room, she had a strong voice that seemed to demand respect. "You sent for me?" Asclef nodded. "Vera, you have heard of the Emperor?" Vera's lips curled into a sneer. "Yes, he has made yet another defeat." Zarkhator's actions had not been confirmed on Groxoria, but rumors had sprouted. Asclef chose to ignore Vera's tone. "You must follow him. When he needs you, treat him with respect, and say that you were sent as reinforcements." "And why would you care what he does? The Grox armies are so abundant. Not even he could lose a battle against the Ironar. He is different. The will of the Spore involves him somehow." That got Vera's attention. "What? How? Spode has not meddled with the moral affairs since the beginning of time. An age is coming to an end, with a new one following closely. We must dominate all ages." Vera seemed to be confused beyond hope, but managed an elegant bow. "I will track him." "Good, do not underestimate him." Captain Nixnurg was a very prompted Iron officer. He was no better at tactics than any other Ironra, but he was much better at scary prisoners enough to give information to him, to aid in his creating tactics, and he had earned this title of the Questioner, and he was obviously the best man to wheedle out information from his mercenary captives. Of course, the Wapjom bounty hunter knew of none of this, and he was sitting on the edge of his prison bed, completely motionless. This was partly because he was nervous, and partly because he was covered in bandages from the attacks by the Epic. Nixnurg began, and saying, in a motionless tone, "Ready to talk?" The Wamjo simply spat on his foot. The questionnaire didn't even look down. Instead, he pulled up a chair and took out a long knife and wiped the spittle off. His eyes were still firm on his victim, though. You know, even prisoners who don't talk are still useful. They are good for alliances. Every planet has a good arena, and I know everyone still loves seeing a large animal tear apart useless scum like you from limb to limb. After seeing the Wamjombom's eyes widen slightly, he turned left and left the room. He knew that no torture could take information faster than his own captives' torture in their brains. Fear. Tigra was also looking at the strange droid factory, with something close to fascination. It was huge. Steam bellowed from every nook and cranny. Even though the building seemed to be in overdrive, only a few 5 droids had been made. These 5 stood in the entrance of the factory, seeming oblivious to the world. The droids were made out of thick metal, but not enough to make them look very strong. Even though each was carrying a small laser, it looked as if the Grox could destroy the groups in seconds. They were obviously not very smart either. They only seemed to take notice of the orange visitor when he was right in front of them. "Ek, stand to attention!" cried the droid in the middle. "He's an officer?" asked another. "If he wasn't, he'd attack us, right?" "Quiet!" yelled Tigret. After that, there were a few Roger said, but nothing else. Tigret decided that his inspection was over. Sighing, he pointed to the droid on the left and asked, "Ask Lord Ragnar to continue mining the other planets to create energy shields, like in the other cities. I believe the Groks are brewing some trouble." The Groks were indeed brewing some trouble, but Zarkhator had run to find a few complications. Normally he would just ignore them and launch his invasion force away. But this complication was that there were approximately 50 Groks dropships blocking the path to the Maraf, so he was forced to deal with the problem. On the command bridge of the Skystalker, a large screen which dominated the room fizzled and sparkled before switching on. The screen then pictured a feline human cross creature who was grinning maliciously. "Hello," she said, in the most friendly tone. "My name is Vera. Sorry to block your path and all, but if furious anyone would dare to talk so friendly to him," Zarkhator roared. "Silence! I could see the ships you command are Groks made. Unless you are thieves, you must obey me, for I am the Groks Emperor." Vera seemed to be taken aback by Zarkhator's attitude, for she had not been treated in such a manner. "But I said silence! Every dropship you command will be inside my command ship, now. You, though, will speak to me here, on the bridge." Vera flushed with anger, but then the screen flicked off, and the dropships enter Starstriker with now open doors. The commander turned to Zarkhator and tried to whisper. "Sire, that was Vera. Asklaf holds her in very high regard. She's one of his favorites, General, and for good reason, too." Zarkhator lifted the officer by his throat until they were eye to eye. "Are you disobeying me?" No, Master. Please. The upper tossed him aside as if he were a rag doll. Just as Vera entered, she turned to face the new leader and said in a threatening voice, "I was sent by Asklaf with reinforcements." Zarkhator did not even look at her as he spoke. "Were you now? Well, next time ask, or you will be more pain than that slivering fool," gesturing to that commander, who was gulping CO2 as if it were precious. "Enough delays. Head for Maraf." Nixnurg was sitting on the donut shop, munching on chocolate with sprinkles, thinking about how to wheedle information out of his prisoners, when his radio began bleating. Pricking it up, he said, "Hello, Captain Nixnurg speaking." On the other voice said, "Hello, Captain. This is Air Control. We seem to have a situation." "A situation? What kind?" "Full fleet of Groks invaders, with a huge command ship." "Oh boy. On my break, just my luck. They're letting out dropships. Why would they think of everything? Fine, I'm coming up." Nixnurg then ran out of the donut shop clutching his coffee, flipped onto his fighter, and then left the planet's atmosphere. Then they landed the true nightmare. The Groks had an equal amount of fighter ships as the Iron Rod, but the massive command ship was doing more Army's real work, shooting down the ships as they were flies. Reinforcements would arrive from the neighboring planets, but Einar simply did not have enough fighters to destroy the Skystalker. "Not a good day," mutters Nixnurg. Tigret then zipped through the Groxian fighters, avoiding and advancing the ships by inches. Soon the massive army had appeared, and he had already begun making plans. There were, of course, several factors to think about. This new fleet was big enough to destroy every single Einra fighter ever made, and if the Groks could do that, they would simply bomb every city without conflict. Except the capital, of course, for it had been built energy shields so that it could withstand any bombing. The second problem was that the amount of dropships speeding towards the surface of Maraf. It seemed that the massive swarm of Groks entering the atmosphere matched the population of Maraf. Tigret decided not just to focus on the Skystalker. He had brought a small bag of explosives and was going to try to destroy it at the core. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a huge fighter that quickly blocked any direct passage. With their rectangular hull and bulky wings, it was hard to see that 6 missiles were strapped to the ship. He then noticed something more important. He could see that through the fire's windshield, a Grox officer was driving, with Zarkhator himself being behind the control panel. He sped through right when all the missiles were fired. He saw out of the corner of his eye an Iron Rod fighter got smashed to bits, but the other missiles towards similar targets. As a few went to the other side of the Skystalker, he saw even more Iron Rod futilely trying to finish the Grox Emperor. "Don't think about that," he whispered. Then he noticed an open door to the command ship. Slipping through quickly, he exited his fighter, only to have missed getting fired by a Grox laser. The welder of the weapon switched onto a wrist communicator and barked, "Guard to command! Guard to command! We have a—" Before he finished, Tigret struck his energy blade in his gut. The orange swordsman then ran to the expanse of the ship, hoping beyond hope that this would be over quickly. Lord Ragnort had only met General Rossilturf a few times. The general had, on the Lord's request, been sent to show Ragnort and the commanders the holographic viewings of the battle, what he predicted would happen. "Here," he growled Rossilturf. "Here's the battle in space. When our reinforcements arrive, we will have defeated about half of the enemy's fighters. We haven't gotten close to their flagship, and we won't be able to until we destroy every last one of their ships." The hologram changed to the city's defenses. The Grox dropships are heading towards the capital. It is uncertain how many men they have, but be alert. Vera struck her head out of the doorship, squinting at the slowly approaching city. "Steady, man," she said commandly. "Steady. Watch it." He then roared at the first wave of Iron Rod burst from the city streets. "Out of all of you, stay out. You need to box them in." The Grox dropships made a semicircle around the entrance on the street, but a stray shot from an Iron Rod blaster caused one of the ships to crash straight to the ground, nose first. When the semicircle of crafts was complete, the Iron Rod forces immediately ducked back into the street, leaving their slain comrades, killed by lasers from the dropships. As the Grox hopped out of the transports, cheering, Vera hauled out orders. Make those slackers surround the city, keep on the alert. Now the rest of you come up with me. We are going to root out the rest of those fools who decide to flee the battle." Zarkhator's teeth were gritted as the ship sped through the ranks of Iron Rod. He was absolutely furious. Tigret had somehow gotten away. The only explanation Zarkhator could think of was that he had fled the battle. He would know if Tigret was dead. Finally, he turned his attention back to the battle. The Grox ships were railed in much in front of the Skystalker, allowing no one to get near it. The Iron Rod was busy doing their best as they could, but it was not affecting the fight. The Grox were winning, but not by much, but they were still there. Suddenly, there was a big flash of light, and the Iron Rod reinforcements. Zarkhator began to grind his teeth again. It was all annoying. Now the Iron Rod couldn't win. It was obvious in his mind, but they would certainly forestall the finish. Tigret stared in the massive complex in front of him. The main generator, the travel drive off of it. Here in the massive room, it descended through a ship in a long, wide vertical tube. Of course, the ship its size certainly had backup generators, and like that, would forestall a complete shutdown, which could only lead simply colliding to the nearest planet because of gravity. He started work immediately. The Grox then left the ship, and would certainly know about the dead guard would investigate in minutes. When he finished, he was totally drenched in sweat. He had covered him every square meter of his explosives. And then the room was now filled with blinking red lights on them all. All he needed to do now was to hit the button and on his remote. "Stop right there," ordered Grox, heading for a group of 10 Grox. "Hand over that remote or we will kill you." No better than a split-second decisions. Throwing himself into the generator pit, Tigret hit the button. Lord Ragnort and General Seroturf were examining the holograms. "Here," said Seroturf. "We are our enemy armies, plus the reinforcements. The Star Striker has somehow been attacked from the inside." Ragnar was thinking of who must be the Grox would surely retreat now. What are our chances now? Thanks to this strange turn of events, Striker will sure fall, but it's not the difficult bit. The hologram then switched on a aerial view of the city. The Grox land forces and are absolutely crushing. We are going to try another attack in the streets, but it will likely not faze them. They seem to have a non-Grox leader. Very unorthodox. For Grox, at least. The Lord nodded, not sure why Zarkhator thought the Grox leaders were interesting. Do continue, General. And then the twosome continued to talk about strategies as the Grox armies approached. Vera had led the Grox from behind. No matter how clever for a technician she was, she would not risk her neck for some slips of Emperor. So she was most certainly surprised when 5 Iron Rod burst out of a nearby building and charged right at her. When one of the Iron Rod was at least 2 feet from her, she slashed her claw arm thing at him, knocking the victim off his feet. Before the attackers got any closer, the Grox swam around her, and then within minutes, the group of enemies were all strewn all over the ground dead. The Grox had a few casualties, but Vera ignored them. "Continue the march," she commanded. "We will make them pay for the price in blood." The Grox commander stared impatiently over the ever-growing blob of blackness on the horizon. "So," he finally hissed, "they decided to send reinforcements. They should now they could never break our line." The Iron forces split into 4 groups, each going a separate way. "Well, they're not stupid. Good." A grunt waddled up and said, "Sir, their reinforces number is ours. Shall we? I make the orders, and we will be able to make the enemy turn back once we reunite with General Vera. We will walk, mind you, and backwards towards the General." "Fire! Fire, you insolent captain! Fire!" The ship thing being pursued exploded into tiny bits. "Excellent flying, master. No thanks to you, Zrog." Zarkhator then looked at his surroundings. All of his fighters had been destroyed. Something had gone wacko at the Stalker and was considerable damage, and the Iron had certainly gained more reinforcements. Then 9 Iron left the main building and began to following them. "Sir? Yes, I could see them." The cat and mouse chase began, with Zarkhator dodging and swooping with the Iron dodgingly continuing. "Mine, what?" The Emperor swerved out of the way just in time, and led the chaser promptly collided with the glowing explosive. The other 8 ships were too late before driving into the explosion. "Okay, where the heck did that?" Then a sleek Rox UFO glided by, with the bounty hunter, Sunnort, sitting rigidly inside. The hologram flicked on. "Hello, boss." "Don't hello, boss me. You almost killed me." "Sorry about that. Why the heck are you even here anyway?" "Didn't you see I can be commander?" Zarkhator exhaled the exasperation. "Move it, you low-life Grox murderer scandal maker scum," roared the Grox commander. "I'm going as fast as I can, and quit poking me, because it's not helping," retorted the handcuffed Tigret. Tigret was being flanked by 2 Grox on each side, with the commander leading and a final Grox in the rear who could not hesitate to hit the prisoner with his gun. "Look, you guys seem nice. Why did you make Zarkhator your emperor? I think he's a total creep. You know, yow!" The trailing grunt snickered as he clobbered Tigret again. The commander stepped in front of one cell. "Throw him in this one." After the door was securely locked with Tigret in it, of course, the commander stopped the grunt that had been trailing in the back. Yes you, get over here. You seem to like our guest. Why don't you guard him?" The guard stared longingly at the other Grox, who were already leaving. Tigret reached through the bars and tapped the grunt on the shoulder. "Would you like to talk? It'd be a good way to pass the time." General Zarkhator was at this time speaking to General Narohinu by the hologram connection. "Well," asked Zarkhator, "have your reinforcements arrived?" Narohinu sighed. "General, there is no way we can send many crafts at one time. We have managed to give you 100 ships, and we are sending more, but you must wait." "That's not what I meant. I meant we need more soldiers to combat the ones we have on the surface here." "I have railed them, and they're already reading for light speed, but they won't be able to reach your position yet." Well, make them hurry. If they break our defenses around the place, the Lord will be in jeopardy. And if the Groks get their hands on Ragnort, then they're going to negotiate and see a hostage. We really don't have a choice. I see your point. Good. Now how about their command ship? It's doomed. We will crush it. That's all? The Groks land forces that had finally reached the Einrod Palace. In short order, the entire area was surrounded by the army. Vera was busy, though, taking in the communication device on her wrist. Reinforcements? Interesting. Normally there would be a match in our army, but the Emperor's last invasion weakened their forces enough. Sir, what do you suggest? Crackled the Groks commander's voice on the device. I will send you some more soldiers. You will push them out of the city and not back down an inch. Yes, sir. Vera switched the communicator off. She then grabbed a nearby Groks and growled. Order the dropships to be filled by half in our army and position them on the roof. We will attack them on two sides. She then turned to the rest of the army. Well, what are you waiting for? Attack! The Groks then surged as one in a charge attack that looked like they are not off guard. Vera threw herself onto the mix and, using a laser strapped to her head, killed several Iron Rod from afar. Meanwhile, the dropships began to land on the roof, but a small property of Iron Rod were waiting. The defenders concentrated on all their fire of the drop ship, and in the front, it was quickly plummeted out of the sky and exploded into a burst of flame. The Groks didn't even bother to get out of the dropships, and instead decided to just run over the Iron Rod. The green fighters instantly realized they were outmatched, and retreated through a trapdoor. Lord Ragnort was the first to see the Iron Rod fall through the small door. Why have you abandoned your post? What is the meaning of this? General Zarkhator was suddenly at the Lord's side. Sire, I'm afraid the roof and the courtyard have been overrun. The safest place for you is now on floor 2. Overrun? But no time for small talking. Let's move. Mess with someone your own size, you scum, howled Zarkhator. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Get over here and fight. I'll show you how I... Sire, they can't hear you. We're in a spacecraft, interrupted Zorg. Well, really, no matter how loud I yell? Indeed. Make a left. Make a Good shot, sire. How many are left? Impossible to predict. They continued to receive more ships. Meanwhile, Sunnort was being tailed by some Iron himself. Closer, closer. Yes! The bounty hunter then trapped a button that released the impenetrable black clouds of gas, causing a great amount of explosions behind him. Sunnord then directed his attention to the Star Striker. It was in very bad shape, and he had guessed it. It was getting closer and closer into the planet's atmosphere. Towards the city, the under sedge. Grinning, he whispered, "This is so funny." "So you're a Groks, right?" questioned Tigret. "Of course I am. Stop asking me questions," shrieked the Groksian guard. "Look, I'm just curious. So you Groks religious?" "No, not anymore." "Anymore?" The guard sighed for the millionth time. "There are only 2 gods in this whole universe, and we have been imprisoned by beyond anything we can dream of. They can no longer affect our lives, and thus there is no reason to actually honor them." "What gods are they?" "This could take years to explain." "Okay, what is the earliest recorded history you know of?" "I guess it would be the legend of the first 3 species." "Go on." "Will you leave me alone already? Once upon a time there were 2 guards named Spode and Edo. They all had made the Milky Way galaxy and all inside of it except life. Edo said he would not meddle with life, saying that creatures Spode would make would rebel against them. Spode did not listen and made them the first 3 species. They were the progenitors of Hiss and the Groks, and immediately began making temples of worship to Spode. At the same time plotted to become the most powerful species of the 3. And to top it off, Edo became furious, and no one made him the temples and began making plans for his own. And then, "Here's your lunch," exclaimed the swaggering Groks with a massive chef's hat. "Finally, give me that sandwich. Chomp, wharf, crunch, swallow." Tigret and ate his own lunch silently, trying to work out the story that he just heard tied to his own life. General Zarkhator was making orders as much as he could. "Split into 3 groups. First group defend the floor 1. Second group defend floor 3. Third group defend the Lord." Ragnar glared defiantly at the general. I am lord here. Now, where are the reinforcements? My lord, we're only being attacked by a fraction of the Grok's party. The rest are stopping at the entry to the city. A fraction? Then wiped out the ones attacking us here. Sire, the fraction is still large enough to defeat and capture you. We have only free score within the building. Ragnar's jaw dropped, but, turning away from the lord, the general now howled. Move it, you slackers. I don't want to catch you idling. Vera had all of her highest ranks officials sent to her in a meeting before they were renewed to attack. They were all a single field marshal and the commander named Yanabes. She had started drawing a crude image of the palace and drew X's that represent the Groks and the O's that represent the Arna. Here are our two groups. We will attack upwards with our forces here on the ground level and down towards the ones on the roof. Now our main objective is to find Ragnar. You have all your senior images of him. The Arna is not stupid and have likely stowed him here. On floor 2, when we have reached there, the entire area will be in utter chaos, so keep your eyes peeled, so that the remaining enemy will try to make a break to their comrades on the edges of the city. We will pursue them after Ragnar is found. Now hereafter is the army, and we have guarding the outskirts of the city. The Iron reinforcements have not been sufficient enough to break that line, so we are home free. Carry out your orders. The two officers nodded and left the camp. The field marshal went straight into the palace doors and roared, Open these doors, both to the Ironar and his own men. A small group of Groks began to beat at the door, slowly giving way to their incessant hammering. Finally, but it burst clear, and the Groks, led by the field marshal, rushed in, yelling their heads off. As the Ironar tackled the marshal and rolled both on the ground, they continued to deliver blows to each other, while the two groups fought until the officer kicked the Ironar to the shins. A horned alien's eyes rolled into the back of his head, and his body went limp. Getting up, the field marshal only had managed to catch a glimpse of the retreating Ironar. Laughing, he switched on his communicator and began to converse with the commander on the roof, who had similar success. Zarkhator's fighter had eventually become a sort of a target for the rest of the Ironar forces, being the one that he had been at the beginning of the battle and was yet still in combat, and with now was 50 ships began to tail him. Under Zorg's keen flying, he went under a series of maneuvers. Up, down, flips, they were all used to keep the chasers at bay, but even he was beginning to slip. Zorg now decided that he could treat the Emperor however he wanted if both of their necks were on the line. Growled, what an artillery do we have? Zarkhator, who was pretty intense himself, didn't notice the Grok's commanding tone. We have a single missile. Alright, let's try something new. He then stopped the ship. The pursuers didn't actually notice how he stopped until they had passed, and then the missile was launched, causing the foremost ships to explode into tiny bits. Not waiting for what was the remaining would do, they swerved around and saw. Geez, whispered Zarkhator, why is my command ship falling? The Skystalker was, indeed, falling through the atmosphere, and it was only moments before it disappeared. Zarkhator then screeched in rage, Follow it! Follow it! Insubordinate! Inside the cruiser, Tigray and his guards were also trying to stay on their feet, an impossible task with everything turned sideways. Of everyone, though, the people most surprised to have everyone in, around the Iron Palace, for the ship plummeted out of the sky, embedding itself in the building. Easier said than done, than the Jivan thrown at the gingerbread house. The palace was now on fire and very much in turmoil, collapse and bringing the massive ship down lengthwise on the city road. Vera's jaw was still working on when the field marshal trotted over, covered in soot, throwing a salute, and he barked, Sir, we found the Lord. Tried to make a break for it, but we got him. Yes, sir. Sure enough, Ragnar was marched out to her in handcuffs, the two Groks poking him in the back with their guns, giving him their best sneers. Vera, stunned at the fortunate or unfortunate turn of events, nodded absently. Yes, put him under guard until the Emperor arrives. She then realized that Zarkhator was likely dead, licking her lips, and she said, "Actually, that's enough," growled Zarkhator, who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. "I make the negotiations. Come on along, Ragnort." Tigrid had found himself sitting on the Ironar. Who are you?" The bruised and battered alien stirred up and sat up. "Ow, what hit me?" "A ship." "Ow." "Yeah? You're Tigrid, right?" "Yep, and you?" "General Ceroturf." "Nice, pleased to meet you. I think we lost." Looks like it, doesn't it?" "Mm-hmm. Let's find you an ice pack, okay?" After a long time, Zarkhator and Ragnort exited the tent that was made especially for the meeting. Both of their faces were totally blank. Zarkhator turned to Vera, who had been risen the two leaders that appeared. "We are leaving, mobilize the troops." Her mouth gaped. "Leaving? But we won! The city is crushed, we did not defeat their empire as whole, but only this planet. They are allowed to keep this place, but they had to give me the jungle planet of Hatra." "Hatra? But they don't make anything more than crops, which is why it's a perfect place to make food for the garrison for that space station we built. I want all the bases in the system to be fully functional without outside help." "Which is that important?" "Because I'm giving you full control of the army's position. Oh, we also have a monolith you could use to make the animals on Hatave evolve into tribes. Of course, we will then use them as slaves and do all the work. Field Marshal, and what species are on the Hatre?" The Field Marshal, who had been tagging along, saluted and said, "Considering the Arnar are leaving, they're on the Obrab, Toloman, Norgara, and Allegent. The Nomgara are slightly intelligent and travel in packs, so it's best to leave them alone." Zarkhator grinned. "See? Now that's over. It's time to start building some alliances, Vera. Set up my ship to head for the Bresican and Empire, and command the rest to go Hatre." Tigrid squinted at the ships leaving the distance. "He's not done yet," he muttered. "But what is he planning?" "That I can help you with," said Sunnord, who had strode over. "I overheard him talking about the Blesenkap Empire." "Who?" "Look, they are big, hairy, vicious, and live in really cold places. Not to mention they're smart. But don't worry, they're our broader empire, so they hate the Groks." "All the same, but maybe I should." "Sure, why not? Maybe you could propose an alliance, 'cause we really need something to fix some of this stuff." "Cool, hey, can you tag Ragnar to make more of those droid factories? Thanks." Zarkhator was astonished by the landscape of the Blizanka homeworld Tungai. It was incredibly cold, something that he had experienced until now. The air was cool and made him moving uncomfortable, with the ice forming on his breath. How could anyone live in such an area was beyond him. The Blesenkas themselves were quite fearsome. They were tall. For one thing, they had canine heads with bony eyes. Their hands resembled as bears, and each of them looked like they could pull a cart by themselves, not to mention their tails with poison, glowing at the end of the mace-like tip. The colors varied from blue to yellow to pink. They didn't seem to like them at all. Everyone gave them bad looks, and some even spat on their feet. But even after a bit of waiting and a lot of explaining that they weren't invading, were taken to the palace. As they walked, the Grox Emperor took notice of the agriculture, and for some reason, they had built the entertainment buildings, although none of the Groxian cities had those. The whole city resembled a cave, with almost all buildings looked like spikes, apart from the factories, which all they looked like cakes. Nothing, though, compared to the Blizanka Palace. The palace wasn't so much as a palace as a fortress. It was massive, bigger than the Iron Palace and the Groxian Library combined. It had huge robots that were standing guard with two at the front gate. As the group of Zarkhator and the Grox and the Blizankan guards, who seemed to be on the edge of attacking, approached, the robot crackled. "Business with the king?" Zarkhator nodded. "Yes. I am Emperor Zarkhator of the Groxian Empire, governor of the center of the galaxy, and I would like an audience with the king." "Very well, but can watch what you say." Zarkhator couldn't help but wonder what the robot meant as they went through the gigantic metal doors. but he stopped thinking as soon as he saw his new surroundings. It was absolutely the greatest display of wealth he had ever seen. Tapestries hung on every wall, gold glittered from the floor, and jewels that sat all on the tables. They were silently led to the throne room, but not without being noticed. Alexandra, the crown princess of Blasenka Empire, gasped in shock and took in the party striding by. Carl, those have be Groks from the books we read. They can't be anything else. Carl, Alexandra's dim-witted brother, sniffed it non-committedly. Yeah, sure. Next you'll be saying that to Volan is Spode, who acts like that though. But that's not the point. The point is that all Blazeligans hate Groks, right? Right. So no one should care if we played a little prank on these visitors, would they? That sounds like fun. Go get Frosty. The Groks Emperor couldn't help but notice the two young Blazeligans hiding around the glided couch, and noticed aloud, those two have wings. One of the guards sniffed at them. And they are members of the royal family. All of the royals have wings. And then they reached the gleaming gold doors of the throne room. They opened automatically to reveal King Sunren and Queen Janana sitting on the thrones with frowns on their faces. Zarkhator swept in and gave an elaborate blow. Greetings, King and Queen. I am Zarkhator, the Emperor of the Groxian Empire, ruler of the galaxy's core. The Queen snorted. The only reason you control the area is that you got a head start before any other species before you. Zarkhator gave an uneasy smile. It was definitely not going as planned. I have some of the Grok's newly appointed leader to say that I am changing some things. Once again, the Queen butted in. I used to think Groks were ugly, but you're just their cherry on top, aren't you? I was only going to say that we are no longer going to attack Blasenka ships anymore. I declare peace. This time the Queen bounded from her throne. You think we'll make peace with you? We hate Groks and we hate their leaders. We will stand against you till the end of time, or until we grind you to dust. Finally, the King spoke. Zarkhator, I'm afraid she's right. Groks don't have a very good reputation, and allying with you could cause us to lose our standings with other empires. The Groks Emperor sighed. Well, it was worth Then he threw himself onto the floor, and as a huge white panther thing leaped at them, landing and scrabbled on the smooth floor, preparing to give chase. But the terrified Zarkhator and Groks had already fled the room, screaming as they were under attack. King Sunren then turned to his wife. I think a stern lecture is to be given to Alexandra, and Carl, Frosty is supposed to stay in this room, not attack guests. In the very center of the galaxy there is a black hole. It is so massive it's actually its own gravity. It binds the galaxy around it together, and a swirling mass of black that, at the time, but nothing had changed. The center of the abyss began to glow, stretching across beyond the black hole until it glowed like supernova. The temperature surrounding it as well, and the Groxian words heard surrounding it as if it were hit full blast. The inhabitants of these words were only taken by surprise and by the strange phenomenon, but thought of nothing of it all until the several hours later, when night came, and they realized that there were now two orbs in the sky, their corresponding sun and that of a light hole. And if anyone was close enough to hear, they might have had heard laughing emanating from the celestial abyss.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please, stay pretty.